With the release of Guild Wars 2 on Steam, I thought it would be a good idea for a semi-casual player to introduce new people to the idea of build expression, and how to create a character that is suitable to your playstyle while still being viable in open world content. Before we get into the guts of the topic, we need to cover a few bases and expressions that are common when talking about builds in Guild Wars 2. First, we have your attributes and attribute combinations, more easily just known as stat sets. Each piece of armor has a stat set, and stat sets are predetermined by the game and given names to distinguish them. For example, the Berserker stat refers to the set of power, precision, and ferocity, while the Viper set refers to the stat set of power, precision, condition damage, and expertise. There are a few overlaps though. The Assassin's stat will also refer to the set of power, precision, and ferocity, but you may notice that the largest stat bonuses here are different. Berserkers has the major stat of power, whereas Assassin has the major stat of precision. Each stat set has either 3 or 4 individual stats. On 3 stat gear there is 1 major stat, and on 4 there are 2 major stats. There is one exception, which is the Celestial set. The Celestial set will have all possible stats, but they are scaled to the minor version of the 4 stat sets. With that all explained, let's go over what each stat does. Power will be your raw damage output. The more power you have, the more damage each direct hit will deal. Precision will be your critical strike chance. The higher your precision, the more often you'll crit. Critical strike chance will never go above 100%, so try not to overcap your precision. Ferocity is your critical strike damage. The higher your ferocity, the higher the multiplier on your criticals. The base value is 150% and it will go up from there. Condition damage is simply how much damage your conditions do. Conditions that deal damage will include burning, poison, bleeding, and more. Expertise increases how long your conditions last, up to 100% longer than their base value. Like precision, try not to overcap this stat. Vitality will increase your character's hit points, and each point is 10 additional hit points. Toughness reduces incoming damage and will add to your armor value. Keep in mind that toughness and armor will not reduce incoming condition damage, only direct damage. Healing power simply increases your ability to heal yourself and your allies. Concentration increases the duration of boons up to 100% longer than their original value. Like expertise and precision, try not to overcap this. There's one additional stat called agony resistance, but that is specific to fractals and is not needed for the open world. Now that we've gone over stats and stat sets, let's look at the equipment you're able to wear. You have 6 pieces of armor on the left-hand side, as well as 6 trinkets at the bottom right corner. 2 weapon slots at the bottom left corner, which will be either 1 2-handed weapon or 2 one-handed weapons, as well as your underwater weapon below your trinkets. We'll go over weapons in the build segment since they're more relevant there than they are here. Each piece of equipment has a different total stat value. For example, your back piece will only provide a small amount of stats, whereas your chest piece and amulet provide much larger stats. These stat value differences can be used to min-max specific stats if you spend time to discover what they are, but that is beyond the scope of this video. Now that we've covered your equipment, let's move on to upgrades. Guild Wars 2 has 4 types of upgrades: runes, sigils, infusions, and enrichments. We'll go over all of them, but the most important one we will need are runes and sigils. Unlike other games, Guild Wars 2 does not have matching set bonuses for having all of the same armor set. Instead, this role is taken by runes. Runes are slotted into armor, and when you have all 6 matching runes, you receive the runes set bonus. Runes are one of the most powerful pieces of your build and can range from healing 10% of your HP per killed enemy, dealing 10% more damage when your health is above 90%, or receiving barrier equal to 10% of all incoming healing. Sigils are slotted into your weapons and provide an active combat effect to your moveset. These can be passive bonuses, such as 5% damage, or an active effect such as cleansing 3 conditions after a weapon swap, or an on-kill effect such as a stacking stat bonus which will continue giving you stacks until you fall in combat. Infusions are slotted into armor, weapons, and trinkets with the exception of your amulet. These provide agony resistance in fractals, but can also provide +5 of any stat for a pretty penny. But you can only slot a max of 18, so only 90 total stat value is possible. Worth it for your min-maxing heart, but not necessary at all. Extremely rare infusions will also drop from certain bosses and are highly coveted in the trading post, selling for multiple thousands of gold. These rare infusions apply a cosmetic effect to your character as well and will stack with each other. Finally, we have the enrichment. One enrichment can be applied to your amulet and it provides a small boost of your choice, such as Magic Find, Karma Gain, and XP. Not necessary to own, but very nice to have. That covers everything in the equipment menu, so let's move on to your build menu. Your build is how your character will play in combat and is the most important part of your build expression. It is important to pick your gear to complement your build, otherwise you won't be as effective as you otherwise could be. Let's take a look at our build menu. Along the left side of the UI is the context menu, and you can swap tabs at the top here to show all your weapon skills, profession skills, build traits, and template storage. At the top of our screen we have our active build templates, and below that our current template. Here we have our weapon skills and profession mechanics. Weapon skills are determined by what weapon you're currently using, so you'll have a different set of 5 skills here if you have a staff compared to if you're using 2 swords. A two-handed weapon will replace all 5 skills, while a one-handed weapon will replace skills 1, 2, and 3, or 4 and 5, and an offhand weapon will only replace 4 and 5. Above your weapon skills is your profession mechanic. This is determined entirely by your class and cannot be changed unless you change your elite specialization, which we will talk about later. On the right half, we have our slot skills. The first slot skill is your healing skill. All classes will have a dedicated healing skill and a small selection of skills that can be put here. Slot skills 2, 3, and 4 are your utilities. These can be changed to a wide variety of different abilities based on your profession. Finally, slot skill 5 is your elite skill. These skills are extremely powerful and have a very long cooldown. Slot skills are meant to be swapped out to complement your current situation. They can include stun breaks, evades, boon application, movement, or just extra damage. Some slot skills also provide passive bonuses in the form of signets, such as Signet of Fire here, which gives additional precision just for having it slotted, but also has a somewhat less powerful active effect, but it will remove the passive effect until it is off cooldown. That covers all your active skills that you'll be using in combat, so let's move on to the UI here, which is your specializations. Specializations provide passive bonuses to your character for playing in a specific way. In this case, I'll be showing off the Elementalist specializations because they're very straightforward, and it is also my main class, so I know what I'm talking about. Our first 2 hexagons are our normal specializations. These can be accessed by all versions of the game. And our third is our elite specialization. If you own any of the expansions, you can slot an elite specialization here, but if you don't, you can also slot in a third normal specialization. On all classes, we have 5 specializations and 3 elite specializations. On our Elementalist, these will include Fire, Water, Air, Earth, and Arcane for our normal specs, and then Tempest, Weaver, and Catalyst for our elite specs. Each specialization has 3 minor traits, which are always active just for having the spec chosen. These are the small hexagonal symbols. Each specialization also has 3 choices of 3 different major traits, which are our square symbols. Major traits are separated into 3 categories. The first column is the Adept line, the middle is the Master line, and the right is the Grandmaster line. You can only pick one of each major trait in each line. Let's take a look at the Fire specialization as an example. For taking the Fire spec, we automatically have Empowering Flame, which will give us extra power while in fire attunement, Sunspot, which will give us fire aura when attuning to fire, and also damage nearby enemies, and Pyromancer's Training, which will reduce the cooldown of all weapon skills in fire attunement, while also increasing direct damage to burning enemies. On our major lines, I've chosen Burning Precision to apply burning on our critical strikes, Burning Rage to make the previously mentioned Sunspot also apply burning while increasing my condition damage, and Persisting Flames, which is a stacking damage multiplier and increases the duration of fire fields. This fire spec is traded to deal damage, but you can also do it like this. In the second case, I've swapped the traits to Burning Fire, which will cleanse conditions on me if I receive any more than 3, Smothering Auras to make any aura I receive also cleanse a condition, and Blinding Ashes to blind any enemy I apply burning to. This is an example of fire being used as a more defensive role. The players of Guild Wars 2 have a shorthand for spec trading. In this first example, where all the slotted traits were across the top, is referred to as Fire 111, and in the second example is referred to as Fire 323, where 1 refers to the top option, 2 the middle, and 3 the bottom. The first number is the Adept slot, second is Master, and third is Grandmaster. That about covers it for regular specs, so now let's move on to the elite specs. In this current example, I'm using the Weaver Elite specialization introduced in Path of Fire. It works exactly like a normal specialization with the 3 minor traits and 3 major traits, but also gives you access to a new weapon that your class couldn't use before, as well as modifying your profession mechanics. In the case of Weaver, Elementalist gets access to a sword and 3 additional weapon skills per attunement, but Weaver modifies the attunements to work much differently than normal Elementalist. Elementalists can swap between any of the 4 attunements at will, swapping all 5 weapon skills and putting the previous attunement on a 10-second cooldown. Weaver works in a very similar way, but different in a big way. Weaver can attune to 2 different elements at the same time, and how it works is your next attunement you swap to will be your main hand attunement, and your previous attunement will be your offhand attunement. You can attune to the same element twice and get the base skills as well, but attunements will always have a 4-second global cooldown. The benefit of having 2 attunements active at the same time is that your third weapon skill will be different depending on both attunements, combining them together for a greater attack. Attuning to fire and air will change the Sword 3 skill to Pyro Vortex, a powerful pulsing AoE. This is true for every single 2-handed weapon and 1-handed weapon, as seen by this completely insane skill graph. The other 2 elite specializations work in a very similar way, changing your profession mechanic in a meaningful way to allow you to play a different style. The one thing we have yet to talk about is the aquatic build option right here. All this does is change your menu to show your underwater skills determined by your underwater weapon, and preferred slot skills for that situation as well. Do note that some skills cannot be used underwater, such as Glyph of Storms, and you can see this by the water drop icon on the icon. With all that being said, that should be everything you need to know about build crafting in Guild Wars 2. Now let's design a build together to go through the process that I use. I'll be using my legendary armory, which is a late game feature, but you can also do this with regular exotic gear that you craft normally. In this example, I want to design a catalyst build that uses one of Elementalist's more unique abilities, which is the ability to grant everyone around them auras. Let's start with the build menu and we'll work from there. Obviously, for a catalyst build, we'll need to select catalyst as our elite spec in the 3rd slot. Next, I know that water and fire have unique interactions with auras, which will be very helpful to our allies and ourselves, so our current build will be fire, water, and catalyst. Our full build will be water 232, fire 123, and catalyst 111. The Grandmaster Water trait will allow us to grant any aura that we receive to the nearest 5 allies. This will synergize with the Master Fire trait, which will cleanse a condition anytime we grant an aura to an ally. This leaves us with our aura application method, which in the case of Catalyst will be the Grandmaster Minor trait Elemental Epitome, which will grant an aura to ourselves every time we use a combo finisher. And combined with Powerful Aura, that means we will grant the 5 closest allies that aura as well. Our Catalyst build will be 111 because the entire row synergizes with auras. Adept will give us stacking damage reduction, Master will give us stacking damage output, and Grandmaster will give us stacking stability. Now that we have our build, the slot skills I chose are Healing Signet, which will heal us on every skill cast, Relentless Fire, which will make our attacks deal more damage for a short amount of time and make our attacks unblockable, Fortified Earth to use as a block to prevent large incoming attacks if we can't evade otherwise, Invigorating Air, which will be used as a stun break when we need it, and finally Elemental Celerity, which will recharge all of our weapon skills to burst damage. With the build completely done, let's look at our equipment. Catalyst uses Hammer as part of its elite spec, so we'll be using that. Hammer benefits from a mix of both condition damage and power damage, but we'll be focusing on power damage, so I decided to pick the Marauder set. Marauder is a 4-stat set with power and precision being the majors and vitality and ferocity being the minors. This will give us a good amount of damage, but allow us to survive a little longer because Elementalist is a relatively fragile class. For our weapon sigils, I chose Cleansing and Generosity, which will both cleanse conditions from us. And for runes, I chose the Radiant set, which will extend the duration of our auras we grant by 33% as its set bonus. We will also get some extra vitality and boon duration, because Catalyst applies boons naturally with their Jade Sphere skill. And that will complete our build. We're now a Catalyst that specializes in everything to do with auras. I can't promise the build will be the most effective damage-wise, but our auras will provide a lot of extra support that most other classes can't provide, since auras are pretty unique to Elementalist. I hope that this guide was helpful to anyone interested in playing Guild Wars 2. Build expression is very important to the game and your playstyle, and it's very important to know how to play the way you want, because Guild Wars 2 will not shepherd you into a role on its own like most other MMOs. You need to discover your playstyle on your own and build it how you want it. With this information, hopefully you can find your playstyle on your preferred class. This obviously isn't a complete guide, but covering every single profession would take significantly longer. If you need it, you can also check out examples of higher tier builds on websites such as Snowcrow's and MetaBattle. They were created by longtime players and are kept updated to show some of the most effective builds in most roles they can fill. But be warned to not use these builds in a vacuum. Your build should be tailored to your skill level and playstyle, so not all these builds may be effective for you despite their listed benchmarks. Be sure to have fun first and foremost in the great world of Tyria. I'll be hopeful to see a lot of new faces on my stream over at twitch.tv/LayliaGoob. Thank you for sticking with me through the entire video, and be sure to like if you found it helpful. Sub to the channel and follow me over on Twitch for live help and entertainment too. You never know when recommended might drop me, so do it now before it's too late. Thank you for watching.